Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Take it on the run, on the run, on the run. Hear them calling you and me, every son of liberty. Hurry right away, no delay, go today. Make your daddy glad to have had such a lad. Tell your sweetheart not to pine, to be proud her boys in line. Over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there. Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Johnny, show the Hun you're a son of a gun. Hoist the flag and let her fly. Yankee Doodle, do or die. Pack your little kit, show your grit, do your bit. Yankees to the ranks, from the towns and the tanks. Make your mother proud of you.
June 5th, 1917. I affirm that my name is Samuel B. Coey, age 23, of Marydale, Maryland. I am a natural-born citizen, having been born in Henderson, Maryland, USA. I am a single Caucasian, medium height and medium build, with blue eyes and dark hair. I work in the creamery of the Lewis Mill Company in Marydale and provide support for my father and mother.
At the present time, the United States is sending between 250,000 and 300,000 men abroad each month. In Caroline County, all draftees, regardless of their town of residence, are required to assemble in Denton on the courthouse green and then march to the train station on 6th Street for the train to Camp Meade. 44 men entrained at Denton on Wednesday for Camp Meade. Many sad hearts were in evidence. Editor, Denton Journal newspaper.
Camp Meade, June 8, 1918. Dear sister and all, your letter received this week. Glad to learn that you are all well, for it certainly has been hot. We boys was out to the rifle range being taught how to shoot this week. We had to carry the pack with us, which weighed about 45 pounds. Some of the boys fell out and had to be taken back to the barracks, but I stuck it out. We've got 2 suits of wool clothes and an overcoat. They are certainly good material. We get plenty of good food to eat, but not any kind of pastries. We'll let you know when I come home. Love to all. Kiss Roberta for me. Sam Coey, 313th Infantry Regiment. Camp Meade, June 30th, 1918. Dear sister and all, your letter and cake come in first-class condition, and certainly was good. I did not open the cake until just before I went to bed, then divided it with some of the boys, and it certainly did not last very long. Addie, I would advise you not to send any more packages, for I do not know how much longer I will be here. We'll close for this time, hoping that you are all well. Love to all, Sam Coey. P.S. Thanks very much for the cake.
I went on the Hercules, and the convoys numbered 24 ships. We were about 500 miles from the French coast when on August 5th, about 6 o'clock in the evening, a German submarine appeared and fired 3 torpedoes at our boat, the biggest in the fleet. One of the torpedoes hit the Montana amidships, and the explosion was terrible. The Montana was an oil burner, and she carried a surplus supply for an emergency. The torpedo struck these oil tanks, and wreckage was sent into the air. Some of the crew were blown to pieces. Many jumped into the rough ocean. It was a sad sight. Private Carl Colburn of Denton.
The night we came over, the Huns celebrated by coming and dropping bombs. The anti-aircraft guns were popping, and it was quite thrilling. This morning we heard considerable firing. I ran out and away off could see several German planes. It was a rather dark morning with low-lying clouds, and they had suddenly appeared out of the clouds after one of our captive balloons. They dashed right at it, firing with machine guns, and set it on fire. The balloonists were compelled to jump and take a trip in their parachutes. A lot of our planes came out after them, but the Germans had got home safely. It has died down now, and probably we will be allowed to sleep in peace. We have to shut our windows tight to prevent the lights attracting a bombing plane. Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Fisher of Denton.
Somewhere in France, September 20th, 1918. Dear sister and all, your letters are both received. I would like to have been with the party of you when you all went to Tolchester. I appreciate you getting me the watch and wish I had it. But I don't think it advisable to have it sent over here to France. So you had better keep it until I return. The peaches and chicken you all ate certainly does sound good, but it most makes my mouth water. Love to all. Kiss and hug Roberta for me. Your brother, Private Sam Coey, 313th Infantry.
Color Sergeant T. Dukes Rowe writes from France to Mr. W.P. Draper of the packing firm at Burrsville and Newbridge of Draper and Slaughter.
Since the war started, your products are found in the uttermost parts of the earth, and as proof of same, I am enclosing herewith a piece of label cut from a can of tomatoes. I wish to say that after seeing the label, the tomatoes tasted about 100% better. Sergeant Dukes Rowe of Denton.
Top Sergeant Louis R. Dukes writes that he had just been sent back from the Verdun front, and that the night before he had slept in the first real bed that he had rested on since he left Denton. It had been fully 6 weeks since he had had his clothes off. Editor, Denton Journal.
We went in camions, that's French trucks, to the battlefront, and they had everything for the movement of troops in trucks except pneumatic, air-filled tires. And we rode in those trucks until our kidneys almost burst. All night long, it was terrible, I remember. We got out and could hardly walk. Backaches? Oh boy, I remember to this day. We hit the Paris-Metz road. There were refugees streaming down that road, French refugees, families, pigs, children, everybody, mixed up with the French soldiers who were highballing it to the west toward Paris, which was only 15 miles away. Nobody knew where the Germans were. The French were running like rabbits. Lieutenant Alfred Noble of Federalsburg.
We are advancing steadily and gaining ground. I would write oftener, but honestly, I have been on the move continually, sleeping in boxcars and mud puddles and old chateaus and palaces, and I have not had the time. I'm used to anything now. Can you imagine me 12 months ago taking one blanket and laying on the ground while it was raining and sleeping like I was in bed? Well, I can do it now and sleep like a top and feel refreshed in the morning when I awaken. Winfield Nichols of Denton.
I was awakened by the guard yelling, "Gas." I put on my mask and went down where our guns were. As I went along the line, it was surely terrible to see the poor fellows who were caught by the Germans' poison gas, gasping for breath and falling over. You couldn't begin to live a minute if you didn't have your mask on. We stayed in masks for 3 hours or until 4 o'clock, then took them off. That's when I got mine. I didn't know it until about 10 o'clock when I began to suffer terribly from nausea. Everything commenced to go round. My knees gave way and my heart was thumping at a mile-a-minute rate. Some of my men found me and took me to the first aid station, and then I was sent to the evacuation hospital, where I stayed for 6 days, with men dying all around me, and me expecting to go any time, as my heart was in pretty bad condition. But after being bled to relieve the pressure on my heart and living on a gas bag of oxygen for 4 days, I am feeling much better now. The burning sensation in my lungs has about gone, and I can take a regular breath. Besides, my heart has stopped fluttering and paining so. Lieutenant Woodall Green of Denton.
There was one woods, the Bois de Bourgogne, which was holding up our advance. Whenever our people stuck their heads out, about 1,000 machine guns and cannon opened on them from the eastern edge of the woods. Finally, it was decided to give them, the Germans, a taste of their own invention, gas. So, 2 days before the attack, we shot over 38,000 shells full of Iperite, which is a form of mustard gas. It inflames the eyes and raises wonderful blisters. Then our men walked right by without getting a shot from the place. The natives told us later that for 2 days, bunches of very sick Germans had been marching past, so what we gave them was evidently the proper medicine. A good thing about this type of mustard gas is that it is seldom fatal. The victims get over it in time. Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Fisher of Denton.
Then came June 7th, when we went into Bellow Woods and cleaned the Germans out. They had gotten in there and very fast had organized into interlocking machine gun nests in the woods, and they shot on sound, not on sight. They didn't see us, and we didn't see them at first. That was the first experience we had of anything like that. The woods didn't seem to stop the bullets one bit. They opened up those Maxims at crossfire as soon as we made a sound. Of course, troops attacking do make sounds. Our artillery hadn't caught up to us yet, so we went in just barehanded and we got slaughtered. We really did. We just kept attacking in that woods and kept losing men. I forget how many we did lose, several thousands. It was a big battle and it really roared. An awful lot of shooting and some mortars and later on some artillery. But at first, it was mainly machine guns and rifles. We were in the open and they were concealed, and they were Prussian guards. And the Marines, we'd have gone into anything. We didn't care how much it was, we never stopped at all, until we were just decimated and couldn't go any further. It was a reckless thing to do in a way. If I were to do it today, I wouldn't have attacked that place head on at all. I would have outflanked it. The only thing our senior officers knew was go ahead and fight them and kill them, damn it. Straight ahead. What are you waiting for? And we were more afraid of our senior officers than we were of the Germans. It was a pretty bad business. However, it did have this effect on the Marine Corps. We got a lot of respect we would have never gotten otherwise from the Germans. We had blocked their whole advance, really, on Paris. They never got a step further. Lieutenant Alfred Noble of Federalsburg.
How a former Federalsburg boy saved a town, and as a result is now among the missing, presumably a prisoner in the hands of the Germans, is told of Corporal Joseph Tolson in a letter to his mother, Mrs. Charles Tolson. Hoping to receive more detailed information concerning her boy, Mrs. Tolson wrote to the Red Cross. Recently, she received the following communication.
You may well be proud of your brave son, Corporal Joseph Tolson, Company B, 5th Marines, who has been reported as missing since June 6th. On that date, he and 2 other men were holding the town of Torrey, and Corporal Tolson sent back word that he needed more ammunition, but when this arrived, the 3 men were gone. Captain Shea highly commended Corporal Tolson for his heroic and admirably timed action and says that his bravery saved the town. We look forward to more definite tidings soon of a reassuring nature. Representative, American Red Cross in France.
We went to the Battle of Soissons, and that was an attack straight in through some wheat fields. All in the open, and we lost quite a few men. The wheat was up to our waist. You go down, and nobody sees as you go down, and it's a helpless feeling. You say, if I get hit, I'm likely to stay hit, right here. That was the trouble about wheat. People just disappeared in it, or were not stumbled onto by stretcher bearers until they bled to death. Lieutenant Alfred Noble of Federalsburg. I was too tired to walk. Actually, I had influenza with a very high fever, and I went back with the casualties to a hospital. I stayed unconscious, and the attendant thought I had died one night. But I didn't, obviously. Lieutenant Alfred Noble of Federalsburg.
Federalsburg is being hit hard by the influenza epidemic. Out of a family of 6, 5 have died. The mother, a lone survivor, is sick. Father and son were buried in the same grave Saturday, and 3 more children were buried Monday. In another instance, Coulter Joseph, a farmer, was compelled to bury his own child, not being able to secure an undertaker. Miss Mildred Wright, 18-year-old daughter of Herman Wright, died Sunday. Federalsburg correspondent to the Denton Journal.
You have most likely read about the fight in the Argonne Forest and the taking of the town Grand Pré. Well, we were in the lead there. When you are moving down a street and caught between 2 barrages with jerry-dropping shells that leave a hole large enough to hide 4 horses in and never know they are there, then have house roofs, walls, and chimneys falling all around you, you think the doors of hell have been blown off. Private Harold Stevens of Hickman.
We reached our place in the line after a march of about 4 days and supported our infantry in a number of small attacks during the rest of that month, October. I say small attacks because they were not army attacks. They were costly enough, however, as the division had about 5,000 casualties in 10 days. Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Fisher of Denton.
As his division crossed the Meuse River, Vaughn Wyatt of Greensboro was recently killed in action by a German artillery barrage described as a hurricane of shell fire.
The flying death whistles, and you flatten down in the mud and putrefaction for an instant to escape lying in it forever. You do this again and again and again until you cease to care. Your mind rotting, your soul rotting. Private Louis McNeil of Denton.
Navy Machinist Mate Hall Barnhart of Denton and the United States Naval Battery No. 1, a land-based organization with guns which carried dismay to the entrenched Germans near Verdun, writes that these big weapons have a range of about 30 miles and used a projectile weighing 1,440 pounds. Editor, Denton Journal. One of the greatest experiences I had was watching a Negro regiment of heavy artillery handling their guns in the Verdun sector, writes a correspondent in France. Those black men would work like beavers. A cheer followed every shot from the heavies. One gunner had a regular stunt. The minute the gun went off, he would jump back, shake his fist, and yell, "Now, Mr. Kaiser, count your men." No matter how fast that gun was firing, he never failed to send along that defiance. Editor, Denton Journal. Major Enoch Gary of Denton received the French War Cross for defiance of danger in the performance of perilous duty on the battlefield. An officer who saw the Caroline Countians' valiant exploits said, and I quote, "Major Gary, when within about 20 yards of the enemy trenches, displayed the greatest coolness under heavy fire from machine guns, rifles, and hand grenades. It was only the combination of a miracle and the greatest coolness that he was not killed and that the patrol was extricated without loss. One hand grenade fell within 2 feet of him, and I was sure he had become a casualty. This was the greatest exhibition of courage and self-sacrifice for the good of others that I ever expect to see." Editor, Denton Journal. The Baltimore Sun of November 1st gives a full account of the Battle of Montfaucon, said to have been one of the fiercest in the world's history. It was certainly one of the most vicious of the present war. This engagement is one of intense interest to Marylanders because the 313th Regiment includes many Marylanders. There are dozens of Caroline County men in the 313th. A member of the 313th Regiment writes the following.
We went into real action on the morning of September 26th at 5:30 a.m. There was an artillery bombardment preceding our going over from 12 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. The scene of our going over the top was so dreadful that it is simply indescribable. It was just dawn as the columns of single file, about 200 feet apart, picked their way through the shell-torn barbed wire and large shell holes. To our left and right, we were sending over liquid fire and putting up a smoke screen. As we advanced, our barrage also advanced in front of us. Airplanes soared overhead in dips and circles. Shrapnel and high explosives burst all about us, but we kept onward, went through the first, second, and third line trenches, although a distance of nearly a mile. The trenches had been torn to pieces the night before, and we had to climb down, up, and over them as best we could. We then came to a woods in which the Germans had 115 heavy machine guns, but we got them one at a time. At 2 p.m., our tanks came up, and we crossed a half-mile field, driving the machine guns out of the woods. At 4:30 p.m., we were through the second stretch of woods filled with machine guns. Across a field 1.5 miles wide was a small town on the top of a hill, which was our first objective. German infantry and artillery had held the hill for 3 years, so their artillery barrages were extremely accurate and their infantry was dug in. We made 3 attempts to get the town that night, but were unsuccessful, being in want of tanks and artillery. But the next morning at 6 a.m., we took the town. That afternoon, the German artillery fire was fearful, and our casualties were quite heavy. The enemy was fighting hard for that town, and its loss was a great blow. Private Louis McNeil of Denton.
We started in the big push on September 12th at St. Michel and never stopped until November 8th. So you see, we had 2 long months of it, and it surely was hell. We were over the top 4 times, and anybody that lives to get back ought to have a carload of iron crosses. Private Harold Stevens of Hickman.
I saw some of our boys who had been over the top 3 times in 24 hours. The skin of their faces was pulled tight over the bone. Their eyes were the eyes of wild animals hunted to the point of utter weariness. Only the gashes, which were mouths, showed the will to go on. All men are sometimes afraid under fire. Probably most men are afraid every time, but their courage consists in forcing themselves to go ahead. Private Louis McNeil of Denton.
Over the whole ravaged country lay, after the battle had passed, the debris of war. A tank stood on end, its nose deep in the hole which had brought it to ruin. Another showed by a gaping wound in the side and flame-licked iron which had stopped its march. Dead horses and men still unburied sprawled half in holes. Muddy equipment lay everywhere. Occasionally, a ruined gun or a stricken caisson cluttered the ground. Not a tree, not a house appeared anywhere. Sergeant Allen Temple of Templeville.
The Journal has been reporting the casualties among our Caroline County boys. Some of these casualties are the following. Sam Cohey of Marydale has been missing in action for months. His last letter home was dated September 20th. William Fleming of Goldsboro was crushed by a military truck 10 days after arriving in France. John Ludwig of Ridgely drowned while serving on the battleship Michigan. Irwin Jopp of Denton was killed in action in the attack on St. Michel. Charles Mowbray of Federalsburg was killed in action in the Argonne Forest. Alvin Meredith of the same town was killed in action at Chateau Thierry. George Hill of Preston, Vaughn Wyatt of Greensboro, Roland Todd of Bethlehem, and Herman Handy of Federalsburg were all killed in action in the assault on the German strongpoint at Montfaucon and elsewhere while serving with the 313th Regiment. Norman Wesley Baynard, a colored soldier from Andersontown, was severely wounded while fighting with the 371st Regiment under French command and is not expected to survive. The influenza epidemic claimed many Caroline soldiers here and abroad. Multiple other Caroline men have also been severely wounded and will have permanent disabilities. Joseph Tolson, who saved a French town, is still missing in action from the Battle of Belleau Wood. Editor, Denton Journal.
The truth is that there is nothing pleasant about war. Nothing. The pen of the sternest realist could not exaggerate the loathsomeness of war. When I first came to the Western Front, I expected in some degree to be thrilled and to feel some inspiration to write about. I came away cold, depressed, mentally exhausted with the immutable destructiveness of the thing. You go to the front, and for days you see only destruction, disease, and decay. Nothing growing, nothing blooming, nothing constructive. It's not so much the flying death that is terrible. It is the rotting dead. Trees rotting, houses rotting, crops rotting, machines rotting, horses rotting, men rotting. That is war. Not bugles and battles, but mud and putrefaction. Private Louis McNeil.
The Peace Jubilee in Denton. Perhaps no event in history was ever celebrated so generally as was the dawn of peace on Monday last. Almost everyone participated in it, actually or in spirit. All the world was glad that the Germans had capitulated. On Monday, the multitudes, the paraders, the singers with the bands, the young, the middle-aged, and those venerable with the years showed their hearts' gladness as they had never manifested it before. The main thoroughfares in many towns, with colors flying, bubbled with the high spirits of the throngs. Guns roared and rockets' red glare streaked the skies. In Denton, the crowd in the afternoon was a great and happy one. Many from neighboring places joined in the celebration. At night, the jubilation was even more vigorous. The happenings of the early week are so tremendous that they are likely to be commemorated often. Indeed, the calendars of the future will mark them in red-letter days for humanity. They will be themes for many a moving address, for ourselves, our children, and for many generations to follow. The homecoming of the boys will call forth public manifestations of joy. All of us love the boys for the dangers they have passed, and they are sure to have a warm welcome when they come back from the foreign shores. Editor, Denton Journal.
I don't think you people ought to get great-haired about me now, for I'm getting along fine. As the war is over, we will soon be home. Just save me plenty of good eats, such as preserved peaches and other sweets I love, and I will tell you many tales that you never dreamt of, and then you will be glad I crossed the sea and came back safe to you. Corporal Clarence Chaffinch of Denton.
After the march down Broadway in New York, we went to Quantico, and I disbanded the whole company myself and gave discharge papers to every man. I put them on a train, and I went down to the dock there and waved goodbye to all of them, the whole crowd of them on one train, all free citizens. There I stood, nobody but me. Oh, and I felt like I was deserted. But then I went up to Baltimore and got married, and we immediately got on the SS Prima and sailed out of New York to the Virgin Islands for my first duty, with the world at peace. Lieutenant Alfred Noble of Federalsburg.
Denton Journal, February 10th, 1919. Official notice was received Thursday, 3 months after the armistice and 4.5 months since his last letter home, of the death in France of Samuel B. Coey. Sam, as we frequently called him, left for Camp Meade last May. On December 25th, his name was in the casualty list as slightly wounded on September 26th. Later, this was contradicted by the Red Cross, and he was reported as returned to duty after being slightly wounded. Nothing more was heard from him until Thursday, when the sad news came that he was killed in action September 26 in the attack on Montfaucon. He could not have given his young life to a nobler cause, we know, but oh so sadly we miss that cheery face and hearty laugh. Mary Dell, correspondent to the Denton Journal.
You Americans in your comfortable homes may think you can imagine what they've been through. but your imagination cannot approach the horrors of the front. You cannot possibly know the value of what you have: warmth, food, a dry place to sleep. You cannot know the worth of 1 minute of peace, 1 minute of security from death that creeps, that stalks, that flies. The everlasting gratitude of their countrymen is the most that these boys can have and the least that they deserve. And it will be an immeasurable shame if one of these 2 millions is ever in need of anything which the nation can give. Do not be deceived by their modesty. Never forget what they have done for you. Private Louis McNeil of Denton.
There's a song in the land of the lily, each sweetheart has heard with a sigh. Over high garden walls this sweet echo falls, as a fond lover whispers goodbye. Smile the while you kiss beside you. When the clouds roll by, I'll come to you. Then the skies will seem more blue. Down in lover's lane, my dearie, wedding bells will ring so merrily. Every tear will be a memory. So wait and pray each night for me till we meet again. Though goodbye means the birth of a teardrop, hello means the birth of a smile, and the smile will erase the tear of lighting trace when we meet in the eye.